Hi, and welcome to AXSchat. I'm delighted that we have Flip Schrameijer with us today. I've been trying to get Flip on AXSchat for a while now because what he does is really interesting. So your Twitter account is Architecture, and you run something called Architecture-For-Autism. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this really interesting line of work?
Sure, of course. When I was young, they still had a conscription army here in the Netherlands, and I refused military service as a conscientious objector. They put me in a big, old-fashioned mental hospital. And so I worked there for 2 years, and I thought it was horrible, and I couldn't understand this happened in the modern age. And then I went to study sociology, and after a few years, I ran into people indignant as I was, and we started something called the Fool's Paper, Gekke Krant, the Crazy People's newspaper, which was intended to cause a revolution among mental patients in mental hospitals. And I did that for 10 years. And then I went to work at something that you could compare to the NIMH in the US, you know, a big sector institute where they did research, and we had a big library and all sorts of stuff there. And I worked there for 17 years, and I did several. I organized big conferences about all kinds of stuff, like AIDS and the buddy system, or women and psychiatry, or short psychotherapy, you name it, like on big conference. And then a couple of years ago, well, quite a while ago, I left that institute and I started to work for myself. And one of the things that I made a living in doing was write books for institutes and people who wanted to book, who tried themselves but couldn't, and then ask a professional. And so in that way, I wrote 4 books for something called the Leo Kannerhuis, a very modern, very good institute, treatment center and developmental center for autism in the Netherlands. And after 3 books, I was about done, and I thought I've done this long enough, because the first book started in 2002, it came out in 2003. No, you have to do one more book, because we have a woman here, and she is specialized in making contact between the treatment people and the architects, because they were involved, because they were kind of expanding all through the country, all through the Netherlands. They had a lot to do with building new facilities and treatment centers and schools, and adapting those for autism treatment and stuff. So they had a lot of experience, and this woman, she was the go-between between the architects, as I said, and the of the Kannerhuis, and she had amassed a whole lot of knowledge and not to do's and stuff, and she had tried to put this into writing, and she hadn't quite managed. And they asked a professional writer, and they got into an argument, and then they asked me, and so they said, you have to do this too. And I didn't know anything about it, but I thought it was, so I looked into the literature, and I studied all the things that she already had put to paper. And instead of taking half a year, I took like 3 years. And instead of a brochure, which was the idea, I made like a handbook for this thing. That's my handicap. I do that a lot. Big projects a lot bigger for the same money than they are supposed to be. And so when this project was finished, this book came out at the end of 2013. And but I had so much material that I asked him, is it all right if I also take your stuff and do something with myself with it, for myself with it? And he said, sure, go ahead. And then erected this website, which is basically all the information of this brochure book and all the stuff that didn't get into the book, plus what I found in the meantime. And so what I'm doing is assembling everything knowledgeable about all the tips and tricks and that I can find worldwide in English or in Dutch or sometimes in maybe in another. There are not many other languages as far as I know, that this is done in Spanish, perhaps. So that's how it came about.
And it's a really interesting thing. I think that certainly in the UK, there are a number of organizations that are undertaking work to look at the built environment to make it better for people who are autistic or have a neurodiverse condition. And obviously, neurodiverse and neurodivergent conditions are significantly different. You meet one person with a neurodivergent condition, you've met one person. But are there any commonalities that you see coming up? Are there particular good practices?
Particularly good practices. As a matter of fact, the UK is at the vanguard of this whole thing. The best literature and the first architects that concerned themselves with this and wrote about it are from England. And yes, there are. Most of them would have, if they are treatment centers or schools, the commonalities are that you have to have, it has to be easy to grasp where you are. So orientation in space is very important. So most of the best designs have something like a courtyard from which you can see everything else, so that you always know where you are in the building relative to the other, classrooms or treatment rooms or whatever. So that's very important. And then, of course, and that's a common thing. I think most people, if not all, benefit from this very much. And autistic people generally, I don't think there are many exceptions where people would not profit from this. And then furthermore, of course, you have the sense. Noise is at the top of the list of things that really, really bother people. Are you still there? Or you're
no, I'm still here. So I'm absolutely with you on noise. Yeah.
Okay, so light and smell and temperature and all the things, for almost all autistic people, and I think probably all, have some sort of sensory issue, and sometimes with more than one sense. Often with more than one sense.
Yeah,
that's a huge subject where there's a lot of work to do there. And then, so apart from, most people think it's only about the senses, but it's much more. It's also this orientation thing. In time and place, people have trouble. You hear anecdotes about school kids that go to a school, and each morning they have to ask directions to get to their classroom. So, they say that for autistic people, I've done a little book about it. A little book about chronic, can you see it?
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
If we hold it still, it should focus eventually.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it translated in any language?
No, it's only in Dutch. I'm sorry, but it's about the chronic. It's about the chronic department of this Kannerhuis establishment, and they. Well, it's a sideline, but I was educated about autism by these people, among others. When you do this, you write these books about, which I've done for 10 years, about autism, and you get private courses all the time. People tell you, and you can ask everything you want to know. And one of these people told me, we have to realize that for these autistic people who are chronically institutionalized, they have to invent the world each day again. You know, they have to build it up from scratch. And that just popped into my mind when that as directions every day.
Yeah. No, it's kind of analogous to an issue that I and lots of other people have with information architecture and software design. So I have, not to the same extent as what you've just described, but I will lose my path. I have to constantly rediscover the menus of a software system. So it's a bit like asking directions through software every day. I find my way through trial and error, even in familiar software packages. If they're really, really familiar, then it might bed in after a very long time. But the constant change that we have with app updates and software as a service is highly problematic for me, and also for a lot of people that I deliver services to who are either autistic or dyslexic or dyspraxic and have very poor working memory. So so there's certainly an analogy, and I've been very interested in looking at the software piece. But I know that colleagues of mine that I've been collaborating with have also been looking at how do we make the working environment more friendly for people who are neurodivergent, and not a lot of work have been done on that. And the numbers of people who are employed who are autistic are very, very low. There are obviously cases, but and you know, there are people that are running specific programs, but in general, no one's really thought too hard up until quite recently how you could design the working environment to be inclusive and friendly of people who are on the autistic spectrum or dyslexic, dyspraxic, etc. So what we've done is create these enormous open plan barns with, a coffee machine that is screeching the whole time, people coming up behind you, having their meetings and everything else. And I've been there, and you end up with the headphones on trying to block it out.
It's the worst thing you can do for these people. Yeah, it's horrendous. Well, I was going to say, so that I thought there are things that you have to account for when you want to develop an autism-friendly space. One is the senses, which is of course a big thing, a big subject. Another one is this orientation in various forms that we just discussed. And the third thing is that the layout of the space in which you are and the way it's constructed defines in part the relations you have with others. So that has an impact on how socially going on with are with other people. Can you overhear them? Can they see you? Can they walk into you? What you say? Do they suddenly pop up behind you? Especially horrible for people on the autistic spectrum.
So have you able to contact universities or studios of architects in relation to the work that you do? Have you delivered conferences at events? Because this is a type of work. Because this is a type of work that should be in the curriculum of architects, sociologists, or anyone working on this space.
No, but it isn't. It's very strange. It is a fairly new subject. It came up like around 2006. That's the first articles in England. And when I started with the subject in 2009, I thought, oh, this is a flourishing new subject that's going to be all over the place. And then I looked back, and then it was that. I mean, it stopped in 2009, articles and all the inventive new ideas. And of course, I've given a lot of thought of why this is not more popular, not more in everybody's mind. And well, there's several kind of explanations for it. One is that architects are being taught in things like a healthy environment. So hospitals, old people's home, around dementia. So a lot of work is done for different groups of people. And so my specialization for autism, people who have autism, is really small. It's, probably to acquire critical mass and attract a lot of people to the subject. And the people who do divide their attention between all these different things.
Okay, I think that maybe the perception of the market size is pretty small, but if you start taking the wider cohort of people who are neurodivergent, or look at neurodiversity with all of the overlaps with dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc., you're talking about a large segment of the population.
I would think so.
And
yes.
I guess things move slowly. I've been working with speech recognition systems since the turn of the millennium, and it's only now that they're really becoming sort of commonplace. So maybe we have to be patient. But I think there are some things going on, particularly highlight the work that's going on within the BBC. I think they're doing good stuff.
You have to realize that there are people in the field. There's another. So one thing is one of the ways of explaining the surprising lack of enthusiasm of a great many people about this is that it's only a very small particle of a larger whole, and it's also a multidisciplinary thing. So you need architects and people who know a lot about autism and or dementia and or hospital life that is always complicated. It's difficult to get a large platform on when the ingredients or the background of people is so different. So that's another reason. And then I just thought of another. I think, however, I believe that when you look in the future and you look at the speed at which all technological developments go, I think that maybe this problem more or less solves itself. I have this fantasy that I just developed recently, that if you look at I don't know much about it, but I know that they exist. You have architecture programs. Computer programs in which you can just put the brief, all the things that you want to do, all the functions that you want to realize in a building, and put a few preferences in, and then out pops a building, and you can adjust it. And you can say, oh no, I want the corridors a bit wider, and I want the ceilings lower or higher, I want more or less light, and and so forth. And these programs seem to be advanced enough to link every element of a design, so that when you say, oh, I want to make it acoustically better, that you get the extra costs it takes, the extra measures you have to take, how big the beams have to be, or whatever. You get presented with all the alternatives there are. And I was thinking, if this, undoubtedly we have Moore's law, which says that every 2 years the efficiency and the innovations double. And we're halfway to chessboard, if you know that story about the grains, the rice on the chessboard that doubles with each field on the chessboard. Yes. And then becomes immeasurably much at the end. So we're halfway the chessboard already in this exponential development. So I believe I think it's only a matter of a few years before you have totally responsive programs that can deal with all kinds of different things. And then all you need is the individual, a profile, and the autistic profile of an autistic person who wants to use a building or live in it or work in it, and you put that into the system, and then
okay. So that's
yeah.
So is that okay? So that's the design process, and you're using that for new buildings. But I'm thinking about, we have especially in Europe, we have a legacy of all of these old buildings, and there's probably certain things that we can do to adapt the older buildings to be, and using sort of smart technology. So I'm thinking about things like beacon technology to enable people to navigate, for example, wayfinding being an issue that we've talked about already. So we might be able to sort of pick someone up at the door through their mobile phone for now, but it might be smart glasses in a few years' time, and it will say, "Hi, Flip, welcome back. Your lessons in classroom 4B," and you walk down the grey corridor, and then when you get to the bottom of the grey corridor, by the picture of the giraffe is classroom 4B.
No, you're going wrong. You have to go left here, not right.
That's the one. Yeah.
Wrong. Yes, that's true. Yeah. There are apps for a number of years already developed to make use of public transportation, where if you miss the bus, for instance, you can type in "miss the bus," and then you get advice about what to do. Call your school, tell them you're late. Look on the table when the next bus comes. Seemingly easy stuff, but some people have trouble with it. So that already exists. Of course, you'll get that too.
Yeah. So that's that for me.
The other thing, if I may,
go on.
The other thing, if I may, what you're saying, it's for a large part, I don't think so extremely sophisticated.
Sure.
It's about simple things too, like noise level in a building. That's not a high technology. That's just a matter of if there's a lot of acoustics or reverberation in a room, get the tapestry on the wall.
Yeah.
No.
So we've got low tech solutions as well. So within our HQs, we've as we refit them, what we've been doing is creating these sort of very high backed cubicles, which envelop you. So what they do is they give you, and a number of our autistic colleagues have said they really love these because they effectively block you off against the surrounding sound, and no one can walk up behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're putting them in. Yeah, low tech works.
Yeah. But you have to realize that there are people. I visited a project where people were living semi-independently. They were being coached. You had coaches in the building, and it was a big flat building, and just people lived there, and there were 2 or 3 coaches that coached them, and they for ideological reasons did not want to help them or assist them in their living conditions. So they had the TL light, which most autistic people abhor because of the frequency that bothers them. This guy, I visited one guy who had wires for his computer run, right through his living room, and I asked, but why don't you help this guy? Or at least discuss it with him how he can solve this problem? And then they said, no. They found that paternalistic and unnecessary, and it's a mystery to me why that would be. Like they would assist people in finding a job and in making social contact and going to clubs, and you know, as long as it is social, yes, they would help. But as soon as it is physical, they wouldn't. People are left to devices. I don't understand them, but this is I found this of course I don't meet many people who have these ideas, because I don't naturally meet them, but every now and then I do. And it's very, very, very strange. This seems to be an ideological barrier to understanding this.
Are we talking about psychologists or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
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 The help profession. Yeah. But also lower people like social workers and coaches. And I'm always baffled because I can't understand it.
It feels like a boot camp school of help there. You know, they really want you to sort of go through the pain barrier to help yourself, and I think that sometimes that might work, but often I'd be like you. Let's find you don't have to do it for the individual, but if you talk it through with them.
But you know, there's another thing which is fundamental to autism and probably some other disabilities also. That is the whole idea, which for some people and some problems work, when you say, well, you have to learn it yourself, you have to find out the hard way, and that way you become more what do you call it, more
self-reliant. Yeah, reliant. Yeah.
And but in the case of autism, when you have a sensory deficit somehow, that doesn't change, that doesn't get solved. If you that is permanent, that will remain, and maybe 10% or so can be changed, but basically this is how you are constructed as a autistic individual. So
I think this attitude reveals a complete lack of empathy. It's
I would think so. Yeah.
No,
ideologically founded lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Today we know that spaces in cities like shopping centers, they are spaces of family, where families go over the weekend. It's what they call as non-places, but where we spend a lot of time with, and those spaces can be very aggressive for people, especially when families, when they want to go out in family, and in the family there's a kid with autism, and they struggle to navigate into those places. So I think, and considering the impact that they have in our lives in modern society, are an area that should require an improvement in order to facilitate people's lives.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Sometimes they have like quiet rooms where you can, get to come to your senses. And
no, they did that in the airport. I'm in Ireland. They did that in an airport in Limerick, where they have a room for kids. So when they are traveling, they can go to that room. So it was a very interesting idea. And there was a professor here at the university in Cork, where she was doing a course for parents focused on autism. She was doing it was difficult for parents to go to university, so she ended up doing that through conference calls and online, to facilitate the availability and of engagement with parents. So it was a very interesting idea. I haven't seen many universities having this type of participation in the way how they engage directly with families, but I think it's very important, because autism is a topic that if you Google it, you end up with a massive number of information. So it's important to have some level of validation. Otherwise, parents will be completely lost in the information that is out there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. We've reached the end of our half hour. It's gone really quickly. So I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's a really fascinating topic, and we've scratched the surface of this because it goes way deeper. I'm really looking forward to our discussions on Twitter. So thank you very much once again, Flip.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and it was very honored to be invited.
Our pleasure.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.